What's up, y'all? Welcome to At the End of the Day podcast. I'm your host, Cherie, and I appreciate you for tuning in today. Before we get into things, make sure you hit that subscribe button, okay? So you can be notified of all the new episodes that gets dropped. For weekly encouragement, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok. And as I always say, if you know someone that needs encouragement, make sure you send this episode to them because you just never know what somebody is going through. So the topic for today's episode came from an episode from the podcast The Basement by Tim Ross. On one of his episodes, he had Pastor Mike Todd as a guest. And on there, they started segueing into healing. And one of the things Pastor Mike Todd kept saying was, snitches get stitches, snitches get stitches. Most of us hear that phrase and we always pertain it to something negative. So he kept saying it over and over. And even though he kept saying it, I was like, it's not hitting me. But then as he was talking about healing and how it pertained to healing, that's when I started putting it together as to why he was saying it. And overall, what he was saying is that you have to speak out and reveal the thing that needs healing in order for God to stitch you back together. I know. That's good, right? So good that he even has a sermon on it. So if you're like me and you like Pastor Mike Todd, go check it out. So on today's episode, I will discuss the importance of healing and honesty. So let's intentionally grow our garden. So normally I feel as though everyone that listens to my episode, y'all are amazing listeners. Y'all do a great job. But today I kind of want you to think a little bit more and reflect during this episode. Make this time about you and your healing because you deserve it. So I think it's safe to say that everyone's goal is to be healed. I don't think anybody is excited or happy or honored that they're not healed. That's not something that people go around broadcasting yeah, I'm not healed and I'm so happy about it. No, nobody's doing that. I mean, they should be doing that, but I don't know anybody that does that. Even though everyone's goal is to be healed, healing requires work. Healing is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It takes time to heal, but you can't heal without honesty. The goal is to be healed, but that requires honesty in 3 areas. The first one being, you have to be honest about not being healed in the first place. Nobody wants to admit that they're not healed. Admitting that you're not healed requires vulnerability, and that's not always easy for everybody. At the same time, it's necessary, right? Admitting that you're not healed in a certain area of your life or from something is deemed as weakness, but it truly isn't. When you go ahead and admit that you aren't healed in a certain area of your life or over something, you're actually gaining control back of your life. The second area that requires honesty is honesty about what you are not healed from. Once you can pinpoint the very area or thing that you are not healed from, that's where healing can start. That's when you're able to get to the root of why you're not healed. Pinpointing the thing that you are not healed from allows you to get to the root of the problem. And once you can get to the root of the problem, your healing can start. The last area that requires honesty is you being honest about why you aren't healed. Your healing is nobody else's job but yours. And I know this part may hurt, but you have to accept the fact that you are the reason why you are not healed. I keep referencing honesty, but what do I mean? I mean, stop saying you're okay when you know you're not okay. That drives me crazy. And we all know somebody that does it. Why does it drive me crazy when people do that? Because at that point, you're choosing to suffer in silence. Everybody around you is asking you if you're good. You say yes, and then they're going to go about their day, not even fazed by the fact that you're not okay. And then you just going to go and suffer in silence. You don't deserve to suffer in silence. You don't. And when you say you're okay, when you're really not okay, you're also lying to God. Because he knows you're not okay too. He knows that. So if you can't be honest with him, he can't heal you. So in other words, when you say you're okay, when you're really not okay, all you're doing is hurting yourself. Now, as I mentioned earlier, being honest requires vulnerability. And being vulnerable isn't easy for everybody, especially because that also is tied to the expectation that you're being weak because you're vulnerable. And that's not the case. It takes strength to be vulnerable. Being your authentic self with your wounds produces vulnerability. Now, let me pause right here and ask you a question. When I make the statement that you need to heal, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Now, whatever it is that you thought about, the first thing that came to mind, that is the very thing that you need to reveal and be honest about in order for you to heal. Life is too short to be living a double life. If you never reveal who you are, you will never heal. Reveal the fact that you struggle with loving yourself, or that you always feel alone, or the fact that you feel like unhappiness and struggle is all you'll ever know. Reveal the fact that you were molested or raped before. Reveal the fact that you have commitment issues or the fact that you have abandonment issues. Reveal the fact that you have suicidal thoughts more often than you even like to admit to others or yourself. Reveal the fact that you have an unhealthy relationship with money. Reveal the fact that your life is not as great as everyone thinks it is. And reveal the fact that sometimes you question God's existence. Stop carrying extra weight that you don't have to. Your silence about the weight that you're carrying is just going to cause that weight to get heavier and heavier and heavier. So stop hiding and stop running. Embrace your wounds. Because God loves you, flaws and all. So whatever it is you need healing from or in, go ahead and bring yourself to God broken. Go ahead. Because that is where He gets to meet you at and stitch you back together. Better than ever before. And most importantly, I want you to speak up. Speak up about your wounds. Speak up about the area that you're suffering in. Because you do not deserve to suffer in silence. And another thing, saying you're okay when you aren't okay is like choosing to wear a mask to be someone else when you don't have to do that. Get rid of the mask. Because newsflash, that mask is blocking your blessing. It is. It's blocking your blessing and it's blocking your healing. And truth is, there's a part of you that wears that mask, not just for everyone else, but for yourself. And why do I say that? There's a part of you that is scared to do the work to get to healing. Yeah, I said we're being honest today. We gotta be honest about that. There's a part of you that is scared to do the work to get to healing. Because to get to healing is uncomfortable. I get that. Totally get that. But don't allow that mask to stop you. Be yourself. There's only one you. And we love that there's only one you. That means you alone have a purpose. So take the mask off. Be yourself. Reveal your wounds. And heal. I feel like a lot of times some of us also struggle with healing because that requires us to feel. You can't skip over feeling the hurt, feeling the pain, feeling the confusion, feeling the frustration, whatever it is that you're feeling about the area that you don't have healing in. You can't skip that to get to healing. You got to go through that part. Feel all of it. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it in order to get to healing. And sometimes we don't want to do that. But that's what it takes to get to healing. And again, I'm going to keep saying it. You deserve to heal. When I think about revealing to heal, I think about Moses. Moses is like my second favorite person in the Bible. My first favorite person is Job. Yeah. He stands in a category by himself. Okay. Job out here alone by himself. Top tier. Okay. Top tier. But my second favorite is Moses. So, if we're going to talk about Moses, that's going to require us to have a little Bible study. It's going to be such a good Bible study that I had to physically go get my Bible. Okay? So if you don't have yours, go get it. You're going to want to take notes on this one. But yeah, we got to take it straight to the Bible, the physical Bible. We ain't doing no electronic today. Okay? So after reading the book of Exodus, I realized that I could resonate with Moses a lot more than I thought I could. And since we're on the topic of Moses, can I just say that I learned after reading the book of Exodus how important it is to read the word and not depend on movies. Because the Prince of Egypt, notice the face, definitely finessed too many truths up in there. And I get it. It was for the children. But can we still tell the truth? Because they made Moses killing that man seem like an accident. It wasn't. So I'm not even going to go down that road. Because if I go down that road, we're going to be here all day. Just know your girl was shocked while reading Exodus. Okay? Shocked. And I was like, wow, Prince of Egypt, y'all really let me down. Y'all let your girl down. But anywho, I think about Moses because he was honest. Okay? And some of you may be wondering, like, what was Moses honest about? When God told him to go back to Egypt, Moses was not like, yeah, God, I got you. I'll be there. Whatever you need. No. Moses was very much like, I have some reservations about this. And not only did he honestly communicate that he had reservations, but he even went into details about what the reservations were. Like, he didn't just put like an umbrella over it, like, yeah, God, I don't know about that. No. Moses got very specific about his reservations about God sending him on this mission. So I'm going to read a few verses from the Bible to just prove what it is that I'm talking about. Okay? So I'm going to read from Exodus chapter 3, verse 7 through 14. And at this point, God is speaking to Moses at the burning bush. And it reads, "The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of what land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the hope of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." So at this point, God is telling us what his plan is. So all of us normally would have been good. So we feel like, God told us what the plan is, why he's sending us, who he's sending us for. Okay? We good, right? No, Moses was not good. Okay? And I don't know about you, but in verse 11, I was more like Moses. Okay? So let's if we're going to be honest, let's read that part. In verse 11, it says, "But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Who am I? Like, Moses is pretty much saying to God, who, me? Like, me. You sure about that? Like, you want me to go? Like, who am I? Who am I? And there's an underlying area that needs to be healed in Moses, in him even asking, who am I? Moses is honest, but he's also revealing that he has a feeling of fear and a feeling of inadequacy. And I feel like this is an honest response from Moses because he doesn't see in himself what God sees in him. I mean, let's be honest. Moses was a whole murderer who had to flee Egypt. And now God is calling him to do godly business. He found and sees all these reasons why he's disqualified. Meanwhile, God's like, yeah, I see all of them that you feel like disqualify you, but I still called you. And we have to remember that God wastes nothing, not our feeling of inadequacy, our scars, or our wounds. And how do I know? I know because of verse 12. Okay, we're going to read that. It says, "And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." God doesn't dismiss Moses for being honest about being hesitant. In that verse 12, God is letting him know, I will be with you. He lets him know, I am going to heal that area of inadequacy and fear that you feel. And I'm going to not only heal it, but I'm going to use it. And when I get done with you, you are going to come out better than you went in. So you would think that God giving him all this reassurance, we should still be good, right? Like, God's giving us a plan. He's told us what he's going to do. He's letting us know he's going to heal us in the very area that we need healing in order to make this mission happen. But no, still not enough for Moses. No. In verse 13, Moses goes ahead and reveals even more. Let's read. And it says, Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? Think that's a good question. So in verse 13, Moses is pretty much like, God, I hear you, right? At the same time, I don't see myself the same way you see me. So like when these people go ahead and ask me who sent me, what am I supposed to tell them exactly? Because I don't even understand why I'm being called, for real. So what am I supposed to tell them? And God is so patient and loving that he even goes ahead. He's still entertaining Moses and the fact that he has reservations. And he's going to pour into him even more reassurance in verse 14. And it says, God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. Period. Okay? So the rest of the chapter finishes with God instructing Moses on what to do and what will happen. But their conversation also goes into chapter 4. So that's what we're about to read next. And do y'all see how I'm setting y'all up for success? Y'all starting y'all week off reading the Bible. Okay? So kudos to you. So I'm going to read Exodus chapter 4, verse 1 through 17. Let's start. Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? Then the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? A staff, he replied. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground and it became a snake, and he ran from it, as he should. Then the Lord said to him, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. This, said the Lord, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Pause. So, like, personally, if God went ahead and used me to perform a miracle like that, and I ain't never performed one before, I'd be hype. I would be hype. I really would. I'd be super hype on 10. Like, oh, God just used me to do that. Like, let's be real. And I don't even like snakes. So the fact that I would still be hyped is crazy. I don't know if I would have been able to grab the tail, but that's another story. At this point in the verse, God is literally trying to build Moses' confidence. So it wasn't just about him, going ahead and turning the staff into a snake and turning it back into a staff. It was so that Moses could see that God can use him. God plans to use him. That he's not going to send him to Egypt with nothing. That when he says, I will be there with you, that is what he means. So when he calls him to do the miracle, just like he did in that situation and in that moment, he's going to do the same thing in Egypt. So he's kind of trying to help Moses see, like, I'm really going to be here. Like, you're not going to be alone. I got you. And you can do this. And to be honest, turning the staff into a snake, that would have been enough for me. I would have been like, God, say less. I see that you have called me. I'm good to go. We out. I got you. But God just continues to pour more and more and more into Moses. And it reads, the Lord said, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. Now put it back into your cloak, he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. Then the Lord said, if they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground. Pause again. There was a whole disease on that man's hand one minute and then it wasn't the next. Like, if this is not building confidence, I don't know what is. Okay? Like, God is still trying to build Moses' confidence as much as possible. Not even just in the physical, but he's even giving him notes. Like, oh, if they don't believe this sign, do this. If they don't believe that, then do this. Like, Moses is out here being given, playing A, B, C, D, and E. So at this point, Moses has turned a staff into a snake, and he had a disease on his hand one minute, and the next minute he didn't. So that should be enough for Moses to really go to Egypt. Like, at this point, Moses should be able to be like, yo, God, I'm good. Like, I see what you're doing. I see why you called me. I can do this. I am adequate. I can handle this. I'm ready to go back to Egypt. I'ma go get the Israelites. Yeah, no. Moses still was like, no. Let's keep reading. Verse 10 says, Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. Pause. At this point, Moses is getting down to the real root of his fears. Okay? He's like, listen, God, I know you're calling me, but like, I don't really speak that well. And I honestly have never spoken that well. So I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to fulfill the promise and the mission that it is that you have called me to do. In other words, Moses is still revealing another thing he feels like disqualifies him. So let's keep reading and go down to verse 11 through 12. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who takes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. Pause. Now let's be honest. God sounds a little irked to me, okay? And rightfully so. Because he's literally doing the best he can to try to build this man up. And this man is still out here bringing out things that it is that disqualifies him. Okay, so I get it. I get it. But he's also like, dude, did you forget that I created the mouth that you talking about? The mouth that you feel as though that you are not that well at using? I gave you that. So you don't think that I don't know that you struggle with talking? And I still qualified you. And even though God is irked with Moses, he still takes out time to reassure him. He's still letting him know, I got you. That I am bigger and greater than whatever it is that you feel like is holding you back. So at this point, that surely should be enough to give Moses confidence to go ahead and do what it is that God has called him to do, right? Wrong. Again. And I ain't gonna lie, this next verse is my favorite. It's like my favorite, one of my favorite verses in the Bible because it's so real. Let's go to verse 13. And it says, but Moses says, pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else. Yeah, that's what he said. And if you don't believe me, go open it. Go open your Bible and read it for yourself. That's what he said. He said, pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else. Yeah. Now, it don't get no more honest than that. Okay? And I have respect for Moses because he was honest. He was honest about the fact of like, I hear everything you're saying, God. I appreciate all the effort you're putting in. At the same time, I still feel like, can you please find somebody else? Get someone else to do this. Okay, please. And even though Moses the entire time was giving us pieces of different things that he felt like was making him inadequate, it still came down to the fact that he felt like he couldn't do it. He felt like he wasn't worthy enough to fulfill this promise that God is calling him to fulfill. And that is the real root of the issue, that he did not feel adequate. He just didn't. So before Exodus chapter 4, verse 13, it was like Moses was just giving us bits and pieces of what it is that he was truly struggling with deep down. And it was almost like he was so fixated and focused on his inadequacy that it didn't matter what God had said. It didn't matter that God had planned to heal him in the area that he felt inadequate in. It didn't matter that God was trying to give him reassurance about the fact that he can do it and what to do. It didn't matter. He was so focused on being inadequate that he could not focus on anything else. He couldn't hear anything else. He couldn't receive anything else, not even healing. In other words, he was more focused on his wounds than his healing. So at this point, God is mad, right? Like he's mad. But at the same time, he's still a loving father. So he goes ahead and still reassures him anyway. So we're going to read verse 14 through 17. And it reads, then the Lord's anger burned against Moses and he said, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it. Even though it wasn't easy, by Moses revealing the very area that he felt inadequate in, and the fact that he still just did not feel called to do this, even though God was literally calling him himself on the main line. Okay, God went ahead and still met him where he was to still get him to healing. So he's like, listen, even though I keep telling you got this and you can do this, I respect your honesty. So why don't you get your brother Aaron? Aaron's going to help you. Aaron's going to come alongside you and he's going to be your mouth. But you still going to do this. It's still going to be you that I called. It's still going to be you that helps save and free the Israelites. So for those of you who don't know, Moses and Aaron end up partnering together to free the Israelites. There were 10 plagues and Aaron carried out the first 3, not Moses. By the 6th plague, Moses became more involved in the forefront, which built his confidence to carry out the next 3 plagues. So in other words, God can meet you where you are. He's not asking you to be perfect. He went and met Moses where he was and gave him the idea of having Aaron come alongside him to do the very thing that he was calling him to do. By Aaron being alongside Moses to carry out the first 3 plagues, that built Moses' confidence even more, to the point where he eventually felt like he could stand in the forefront and carry out the next 3 plagues. And eventually, the more that they were doing it together, the more that they were hearing from God and doing what it is that God had called him to do, it was building his confidence. And the bigger his confidence became, the smaller his feeling of inadequacy became. And that's God's goal for all of us when it comes to healing. Healing is not overnight. It's not a snap of a finger. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And it's going to take practice. Why did I share all of this? I shared all this to say, imagine if Moses decided to ignore all the areas that needed healing and decided not to go back to Egypt. He would have continued to live with this feeling, this deep-rooted feeling of inadequacy. And then he would have continued to settle for a life that was less than what God had for him. And another point is that the Israelites would have remained slaves even longer. So in other words, there's somebody that is depending on your healing. You may know them, you may not know them. But by them seeing you be healed, by them hearing about you being healed, is going to encourage them to do the healing journey as well. You take care of everyone else. You make sure everybody else is good. You prioritize everybody else. But I need you to prioritize your healing. Live in your truth and let go of the baggage. Your life has meaning even with the wounds. Once you heal, those wounds become scars. Scars that you'll embrace because you'll realize that they help make you become who you are today. Put in the effort to heal, because you being the best, healed, authentic version of yourself is your birthright. Now, guess what, y'all? That's right. It's Q&S time. Q&S stands for quote in scripture. This is time that I set aside in the episode to share a quote in scripture with you to encourage you throughout the week ahead. The quote I chose for this week is from Young Pueblo, and he said, "Before I could release the weight of my sadness and pain, I first had to honor its existence." The first step to healing is admitting that you have a wound that needs healing in the first place. Ignoring the wound hinders your ability to heal. And what happens to a wound if you don't take care of it properly? That's right. It becomes infected. So the area that you are not healed in, that has this wound, that you're ignoring its existence, and you're acting like it's not there, and you're just going ahead and going about your life, it's going to become infected. And then that area is going to start to spill into other areas and infect those areas as well. And you don't deserve it. Healing requires energy and effort. And quite frankly, we already give too much energy and effort to too many people. So now it's time for you to start giving yourself that energy and effort towards your healing journey. So stop ignoring your wounds. Acknowledge that they're there. Start taking the steps daily towards healing them. Because if not, you'll just be walking around with an open, infected wound. And again, you don't deserve that. The scripture I chose for this week is from Psalms chapter 147, verse 3, and I'm reading from the New King James Version, and it reads, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. So stop holding the broken pieces of your heart in your hands, and stop slapping a band-aid on your wounds. Address them, acknowledge them, and take them to God. The Lord already knows everything. He knows about your wounds. He knows about your scars. He knows about the area that you need healing in. He knows everything. And He cares about your healing just as much, probably even more than you do. Even though He knows, you have to be honest with God about the fact that you are brokenhearted and that you need healing. Because by being honest, you're surrendering. You're surrendering everything it is that you felt the need up until this point to hold on to and take care of yourself. Because you can't. You can't take care of it yourself. You're going to need God to heal you. And God can handle all of your wounds. There is no wound that is too infected that He can't heal. There is no wound that is too big that He can't stitch back together. And there's nothing too broken that He can't put back together again. And to be honest, the Lord is the best surgeon there is. Okay? He can put you back together, piece by piece, stitch by stitch. But you have to come to Him with all of the pieces. And not only does He put you back together, but He puts you back together better than when you were before. Now, revealing your wounds will be uncomfortable, but imagine a life you can live without wounds. So I don't want you to focus on the uncomfortable aspect of healing. Healing is not an easy road to go down, but it is always necessary. So before you go, I want you to know you have done the best you can with the wounds you have. You have. I truly believe that. You have tried to live with the wounds, and you have tried not to allow your wounds to consume you. And even though you have done all that, let's be honest, you're tired. You're tired of running from healing. You're tired of hiding your wounds. And you're tired of lying about your wounds. So I just want you to stop. Stop hiding, stop running, and stop lying. You can heal from it, but you can't do it alone. Now, if you didn't know, God is in the healing business. You just have to invite Him in. So I want you to reveal to Him that you are wounded. I want you to reveal to Him that you are broken. The Lord's plan for your life is to watch you be the best healed version of yourself. But it starts with you being honest about your wounds. So at the end of the day, you must reveal to heal.
I know what you're telling ain't the truth. I'd rather have all your weight removed. You wonder why I don't let you in, because I got better things to do. Better things. Better things. Moving on to bigger and better things. Then do the worst, I need better things. If you knew better, you'd do better.